guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have Sarthik with us, and he's doing PhD from University of Arizona in physics. Alright, Sarthik, let's get started. Where are you from, and what are you doing currently?
So I'm from Mumbai, India. I did my bachelor's and my master's of science in physics from University of Mumbai, and right now I am in University of Arizona, like you said, doing my PhD in physics.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Can you tell something more about yourself? What have you done? Like your bachelor's in, your master's in?
Oh yeah, so my bachelor's was in general physics, I would say, bachelor's of science in physics, and my master's was also in physics, but like my specialization was solid state physics. So basically, what my goal was, or like I was always interested in research, so that's the reason why I was always eager to participate in groups or some labs where I could do research, and that's how I got started with like doing research right from the undergrad days. During my masters, I published a paper, uh, and when you're applying for PhD positions anywhere, publications do matter. So that's how not only shows like how experienced you are as a researcher, but that also shows how good are your writing skills and everything. So yeah, I've been doing research, I've been taking courses, I've been doing a lot of things, and that's how I got here.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! That's pretty amazing. Like publishing a research paper like while you're doing masters. So, do you have any work experience prior coming to US for your PhD?
So the thing is, I graduated with my master's degree in the year 2020, and you know what happened in 2020. There was like lockdown everywhere, and someone like me who is from experimental background, we rely heavily on going to the lab and getting the results. So that's the reason why I could not gain much experience. However, when things were calming down, when things were opening up, I would say, I got an opportunity to work under one of my professors where I did my master's from. That's where I, participated in research, did some work, and yeah. So I would say I just have like uh, 9 to 10 months of work experience as a research intern or research associate, and after that I directly came here.
Oh, that's amazing. So, like, you look really passionate about research in general, and you're just like creative, and you want to do something, you want to innovate something. So, how does someone
Yeah.
get into research? How do they get started?
So let me tell you my story. I was interested, like I said, in research and wanted to know more. Wanted to, look at things that are beyond the textbooks. And so when I was in my undergrad, I got in touch with one of my professors. They were doing some research with nanomaterials. So basically, they were doing research on magnesium oxide nanomaterials. That's when I decided to, do some small work for them. Like they would do some characterization technique, and then they would send me the data. So my job was to, plot the data, read a lot of literature, and understand some correlation between, just giving you example, like particle size and conductivity or something like that. So just small things is what I started from, and eventually, uh, when I was a research associate as an intern, that's when I was given a big project, and I could use all of my skills that I had learned so far. So I would say if you want to get started, it's generally advisable to reach out to your professors. Many a times they're doing their work and they need undergrads. So if you get even the smallest of smallest exposure, I would say just go for it. And you never know, like you could learn more things than what you would have expected. You can apply whatever you learned in your undergrad you can apply that to maybe 5 or 6 years down the line in while you're doing PhD or something like that. So I would say every small exposure towards research matters, and just go and seek out the opportunities.
Well, that's great. So starting early is one of the things that someone who wants to go into research should keep in mind. That the earlier you start, the better it is, because you can
Yeah, I would say that.
explore at like a foundational level.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Whoa, that's great. That's great. So, what motivated you to like study in University of Arizona?
So when I was applying for PhD positions, I had a couple of, I would say, topics in my mind, and one of the topics was what I'm currently doing my research in. That is magnetic tunnel junctions. Basically, what we do is we uh, use magnetism to do some form of computation. We basically use magnetism to change the magnetization of the transistors and everything, and that's how we basically do research in spintronics. It's a part of a bigger field called spintronics. So that topic was already on my mind, and I was just going through a list of people who are working in that field. That's when I came across the advisor that I'm currently working for. I looked into his research, I liked it. I looked into my past experience and I realized that I have not exact but somewhat correlation to what I have learned and what I can, provide to this advisor. And that got me interested. So I just reached out to him. He liked my, profile. I applied and that's how I got here.
Oh, that's amazing. So, can you walk us through like the application process of how you applied and how does one reach if they wanna like do PhD like in a country like US?
Okay, so again, I think the answer to most of these questions would be like to start early. I started reaching out to different professors right from the month of May, or I would say April end of May. That's when I started reaching out to professors, and it's generally a good time to reach out because that is when you most of the universities have summer breaks. Professors are mostly done with their teaching their courses and everything, so they have some free time, and there is more possibility that you can get a reply from them. So I started reaching out to professors from May until somewhere around mid of June. That's when I had like by the end of the June, I had a list of 10 to 12 universities that I can apply to. Uh, once I had once I had that list, I was like, yeah. So once I had that list, I looked into the websites like website of the programs. That's also like important because you need to know what are the requirements and everything. Once I got a list of requirements for each of these programs, I started giving the exams or whatever they required. Like some programs required TOEFL scores, some programs required a GRE score. So I think from end of June to the beginning of October. I think that was my timeline. Yeah, end of June to beginning of October was when I was done with all my uh, exams, like the TOEFL exam and GRE, and I started applying to the programs right from the month of October. So it was like I said, the earlier you apply, the better. So by the first or second week of November, I was done with my applications. And generally, some universities, not all, it depends on programs. Some programs, they generally have a uh, early acceptance thing. So they would send out the acceptance letters much earlier than what sometimes it happens that they would send you acceptance letter even before their deadline has gone to like has passed. So that is also a very good thing if you get that, and you have to try to hit that opportunity as well. So yeah, so basically I was done with all my applications still from the second month of November, and then there was a big waiting period for me. So yeah, that was the general timeline for me.
Oh, that's amazing. So, you're saying that you applied in May. So, were you like doing your master's when you applied, or like did you like take a drop year to apply for the PhD?
So I did take a drop year. Instead of saying a drop year, I would like to say that I was gaining research experience. Like I said, after my master's, I was doing a research internship, and yeah, so that was really beneficial for me. So yeah, I was not doing a master, basically just doing my
Oh, that's
internship
amazing.
there.
So, do you think that the people who are like pursuing masters, they can like start planning early for their PhD so they can apply in their last years of master or something? I think that might be something which is going to be better because it's going to be their last year of masters, and if they want to like pursue a PhD, they can directly like go for PhD from there.
Yeah, so if you are like, okay, so for me, I was not 100% sure whether or not I wanted to do a PhD abroad, like from US or any other country, when I joined my master's program. But if someone is, kind of determined, if they are like, they have already made up their mind to do PhD from US, right from the beginning, so then they can, shape their master's program that way. So instead of focusing more on coursework, I mean, of course, coursework is important, but instead of focusing on getting 100% of the coursework, it's okay if you get 80 or 90%, but make sure you also have some research experience right from the very beginning. And if try to be strategic in this way, maybe you don't need to do some research internship. You can directly apply right when you are in the master's. So as soon as you graduate, mostly for Indian universities, it's a month of May when you graduate. So right when after you graduate, you can directly join the graduate program here in the month of August. You don't need a waiting period if you are, strategic enough.
Oh, that's amazing. So, were you supposed to take any exams like TOEFL, GRE to like apply for your PhD program in US?
So every program have their own different requirements list. Some programs require TOEFL, some programs require GRE, some require GRE physics as well. Talking about U of A, they only require TOEFL exam. I don't remember sending them GRE or GRE physics course. They just require TOEFL exam and the transcripts, of course, your transcripts from undergraduate degree, TOEFL exam, your CV, and also personal statement. Those are the only four things they
Oh,
asked
that's
from me.
cool. That's cool. So you could say I think every university in the US they might require English proficiency exam. Either it can be IELTS or TOEFL. So I think that's like a major requirement, unless like you
Yeah.
did all of your education in English, but which we do. But usually like people like the universities require them to have at least any one of like the English proficiency exams and like test scores for that. So Sarthak, what do you think a standard application for a PhD might look like? Like if someone from India wants to apply for a PhD at a US university, for instance, the University of Arizona. So how should one get started with the application?
Yeah. So I would say that start early. That is like the biggest advice I can give you. Start early and be be a little bit determined, or I would say know what you have to do. It's okay if you don't have like 100% idea, but at least have some idea of what you want to do. Have a broad overview of field that you like, and once you figure that out, start emailing the professors. Again, be very careful with emailing. Sometimes it happens that students, someone just email one professor and then they copy paste the same thing to 100 different professors. Don't do that. Make sure your email is more personal. It is crisp, it is short. Professors don't have time to read long emails. Let them know that you are interested. Show them that you can offer them something, something that they're looking for. Make sure that they at least go over your CV. If you follow all that points, then yeah, it is. I think it is very much likely that you will get a response. So first thing is reaching out to professors. Make sure they have openings and everything. Second thing, once you have a list of universities that you think you might get a chance that or that you think the professors have shown a positive response, that's when start preparing for the exams like TOEFL, GRE, etc., etc. Start preparing for them. Get everything sorted by like the latest is September. Make sure you're all done with all the exams and everything, like till September or October. And yeah, meanwhile, when you're like preparing for the exams and everything, also make sure you're writing your personal statements. Go over it a million times. Make sure there are no grammatical errors, everything. Personal statement, statement of purpose are the most crucial uh, thing on your on your application packet. So once you sort the personal statement and statement of purpose, once you are done with the exams, just go forward and apply for the universities. The sooner you apply, the better. And then, yeah, make sure you have good luck.
Oh, that's cool. So, what platform did you use to like apply for your PhD program? Like, did you use any specific platform like common application, or like did you just mail the professor, or like did you apply through the university portal?
Okay, so reaching out to professors for just email. The thing in the US is, unlike Europe, even if the professor likes you, you still have to go through their admission process. In Europe, I've heard it's different. If the professor likes you, you're into the program. But here in the US, even if the professor, wants to work with you, you still have to complete all the formalities. So yeah, so when you apply for the graduate programs, you still have to go through the university portals. Like on their website, they have the all the guidelines and everything you have to follow. I think it's not very different than what you would apply for a master's degree program. It is more or less the same thing. It's just that you're applying for a grad program and the professors have different expectations from you, like what are things to be included in statement of purpose and everything. But I would say the application process is more or less the same thing, like for master's students.
Oh, that's amazing. So like the first step is to like just mail the professors that hey, so this is the area of interest that I have, and I want to like research with you specifically on this topic, and I've like already published like XYZ research papers on this thing, and then you like just they will like give you I think steps to go to the university portal, and over there I think you have all the spaces to like write your statement of purpose, submit your resume, your like transcripts for undergraduate and like masters.
Yeah, exactly. So I did not have any professor tell me that. They were just like, "Oh, we like your profile. Just go ahead and apply." But yeah, maybe sometimes professor tell you the steps. I haven't heard of it yet. But yeah, it's the process is basically straightforward. You just go onto the website, the program website. There is a list of things, step by step. They ask you for your details, then the documents, everything. Then you pay the application fee, and once you do all of that, it's well and good.
Oh, that's amazing. So, what are like the minimum requirements you need to like get into like a good PhD program in like a US university, like for you like at University of Arizona?
Okay, let me tell you one thing. Uh, there is I mean, of course, you can go and look at the university rankings, but the university rankings don't generally apply for graduate programs, especially PhD programs, because it may happen that you have a little lower rank university, but the one professor there is doing like phenomenal work. So my advice is, if you're looking to apply for programs, do not go through the rankings. Go through like what research they have done, what the advisor is like, how well established the advisor is. That is the key thing. And coming back to your question about like,
So, what's like the minimum requirement for someone to like to pursue a PhD at like a US university?
okay, so the minimum requirements differ for different programs, but I would say that having a good research experience, having decent enough grades, like pretty decent enough, not very bad. Even if you have bad grades, it's fine. Like you should be able to explain why you have bad grades. If you explain that you had some problems before, and then if you show improvement, that is going to be much more much better, I would say. So have decent enough grades, have good research experience, and have a really good statement of purpose. Like show them that you have a clarity, show them that you know what you're doing, you like the field that you're going into, and I think those are the only three things that you really need. It it's not very quantitative. It's more like a qualitative thing that you have to convince them that you are the right fit for the program.
Well, that's amazing. So well, so one should have like a qualification from like any undergraduate institute, and after that thing they should have like decent enough research experience. So what do we mean by like what's like a good research experience in your perspective?
Okay, so a good research experience, I would say that you have contributed to the research that is happening in the lab, and it's not always necessary to have research papers published. If you have a paper published, that's well and good, then no doubt about that. But even if you don't have, it's fine. So normally you also have recommendations from professors that you have to submit, right? So if you do good enough work in your lab, the professors will give you a good recommendation, and that also counts. Really, that is also a pretty significant thing. So a good research experience is, making sure that you have done good job, good enough that you get good recommendations, making sure you have attended conferences. That's how the people here know that you are active in research and that you're passionate about it. So I think these are the two things you can, like, have under your belt to show that you are right fit
Well,
for the program.
that's great. That's great. So well, having a good research experience and then like just like applying to the portal and just getting through all that process. So
Yeah.
what do you think, Sarthik, that like in US universities there's this thing that necessarily you don't have to like require like a master's for like doing a PhD. So if you only have like a bachelor's, you can like directly go and pursue a PhD. But I think you did your bachelor's and then your master's and then you applied for PhD. But I've seen like a lot of students who like just directly go for their PhD just after their bachelor's. So what are like some other things that one should need to like get into like a PhD program? Like these are like the basic things. Or do you have like any minimum requirement that hey, you should have like at least two to three research papers published in like IEEE Journal or like particular Scopus index? So what about that?
Again, it differs from for different programs and different fields. Some fields are where you can publish a lot of papers. Some fields are where you cannot publish a lot of papers. So the professors know that, and there is no one answer for that. But I would still say, like, try to attend conferences, try to do research good enough that you can present something in the conference. And that's what you can call a good research. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So
Yeah.
that's cool. So what are some challenges you faced during the application or relocation process, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, relocation as in coming to US?
Oh yeah, exactly. Like settling in the US and in general.
Oh yeah, I mean there were a lot of cultural shocks. One of the cultural shock is how car dependent this place is.
Oh
Like
really?
you cannot get anything. Yeah, you cannot get anything done without a car here. This is not what we see in places like Mumbai or Delhi or any metropolitan region.
Yeah.
You have public transport there, so that was a cultural shock for me. The second thing is how things shut down here pretty early in the evening time. Like by 8 p.m., you have most of the things closed down. I was not used to that, so that was a cultural shock for me. And yeah, but apart from that, it was a good experience. Uh, it was difficult, it was challenging in the initial days because you have to sort out a lot of things. You don't know people around you. You're like complete stranger to the place, to the people around you. And then you also most of the times you don't have friends when you're coming here before coming here. But once you spend time here, then you get used to things. You know how things work here, and that's how you get your life, on track here. So yeah, it's going to be challenge for the first 6 months, but I think, and not even 6 months, the first 2 or 3 months. But then I think you'll get used to it and you'll enjoy it.
Oh, that's great. And what are like some challenges like you faced during your PhD application?
Challenges were, yeah. So one of the challenges that I faced was getting transcripts from my undergrad college. So yeah, so like I had applied for the transcripts, but the problem was that there were a lot of mistakes on the transcript. So generally, when they give you the transcript, it is in the sealed envelope. You cannot open that. But what I had done was I had ordered multiple copies, and I opened one of them and realized that there was a mistake on the transcript. And I just assumed that if there is a mistake on one copy, there must be a mistake in other copies. So I had to go back, get another set of copies from them. Even the other set had a mistake, so I had to go back again. So yeah, just make sure that you don't have mistakes on your transcripts, and that's like, mm, I mean, that can tip the things against you. That can go things against you if you have something wrong on your transcript. So I would say the getting the transcript thing was a little bit of problematic for me. But apart from that, all the process was pretty smooth. Like I said, since I started early, I even like I started early, right? So it was not a problem for me even when the things with the transcript happened. Apart from that, I don't think there was any big major problem or challenge as such because I had things already sorted for me. I had already talked to the recommendation, like people who were about to give me recommendations, like early on, and yeah, it went somewhat smoother for me, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. You didn't have like much problems in like your PhD process except like the transcript thing, and not once,
Yeah,
twice. All right.
yeah, I had to go twice. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So as you said that you got your LOR and like statement of purpose from your professor. So I believe that you wrote your LOR, or not your LOR, you wrote your statement of purpose. And what about your letter of recommendations? Like, was it like a requirement for you to like submit for the PhD program? And like, did you get any of the LORs from your professors?
Yes, letters of recommendation are probably the second most important thing when it comes to PhD applications. And yeah, I had four people, four professors who wrote recommendations for me. For University of Arizona, you only required like three. There are some places where you only require two recommendation letters, some where you require four recommendation letters. So it really depends from program to program. But yeah, I had professors who wrote good recommendations for me, hopefully, and things worked out well. And yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's amazing. So what resources like were most useful when you were like preparing to like study abroad?
Sources as in online sources. Okay. So when I was writing my when I was writing my statement of purpose, that's when I use Grammarly a lot. Things like Grammarly, and there's also something called as Pro Writing Aid, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So one thing about statement of purpose is you have to make sure you're grammatically correct, you're using good vocabulary and everything. Of course, I was trying my best, but still you need some guidance, and we did not have chat GPT during that time, so I had to rely on those things. Second thing was what I did was I reached out to someone on Fiverr. It's a freelancing platform. where people will, uh, what do you say? They will look at your resume, not resume, look at your statement of purpose and suggest you something because I had no one around me to help me out with that. So I reached out to one person. They were offering this service, and I got my statement of purpose reviewed by them. If it's like good, structured, good, you need a third eye to review these things. So that is one thing I like used, and yeah, that's it. I don't think I used anything other than that.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think like your PhD application process went well. Like, did you use any consultancy or like any other service in your locality, or did you like do all of that thing by yourself?
So the application and everything I did it by myself. Um, so I had my application, sorry, my acceptance letter in the month of January itself. However, like always, there was a problem with the visa interview slots. By the end of May, I did not have a visa interview, so that is the reason why I reached out to one consultancy for visa assistance. That's a different story. It was of no help. But yeah, I mean, I reached out to them because I wanted a slot for visa interview. But eventually, I ended up, figuring that out myself, booking it myself. So it was of no use.
Bro,
And
that's great. Like, I can relate to that very well. I have like a lot of friends who like had trouble getting a visa slot, but when I tell them my story that how I got the visa, so one day it was morning. I was just watching Naruto, so I started like Naruto Shippuden. It's like an anime. So I was just watching that thing, and suddenly I was like, all right, let's go and check the visa slots. It was I think like in the early month of I think May or something, and I
mhm.
just went to the site. I saw two slots for like the biometrics and like the visa, and that was the same, not on the same day, on like 2 days, consecutive days. So I think it was like 21st and 22nd. I just went over there, I booked that thing, I got a mail. All right, so your visa is confirmed, and congratulations. I'm like, whoa, that was it.
It's very random, yeah. It's very, very random. If you're lucky, you'll get it like in one go. If you're not that lucky, you would have to, keep checking the website. I don't know how is the procedure now, but during that time, we only had like, three attempts to log into that visa portal,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
that is to limit a lot of things. So yeah,
It's
I mean,
still the same.
I was
Like
stressed.
the last time when I applied, it was like the same thing. It's like three attempts. So if you can get in that, you get in that. If you can't get in that, I think you're like banned for I think what 24 hours or something. Then like you have to try after
70
24 hours.
hours. 70 hours.
Oh
I remember that.
whoa, it's 72, not 24. Damn, damn, damn. All
Yeah,
right.
you can only log in three times in 24 hours, but if you log in for the fourth time, you get banned for 72 hours. I remember that thing.
Whoa, man. That's like
Yeah,
another kind of nightmare that all right, not able to get slots and like you have your acceptance
exactly,
letter and like you're all
exactly. I
set
mean,
to go.
it was like for me, it was the end of May, and I still did not have any like visa application or visa interview slots, and that was stressing me out. So yeah, if you asked the question right before, what was the challenges? I think visa was the biggest challenge for me.
Whoa, that's cool. That's cool. So do you also have like F1 visa for like doing a PhD or like is it like a different kind of visa?
It's the same F1 visa for 5 years. And
That's
I think, yeah, I mean, it depends on what field you are. So in my field, in experimental physics, at least at UFA, it takes a little longer than 5 years. Sometimes it takes 6 years, sometimes it will take 6.5 years. Even in that case, I think you can renew your F1 visa for another 5 years. It's completely possible, I think.
oh, that's cool. That's cool. And like how many tries like did you give for your visa?
Oh, just one try. So the thing that happened with me was, yeah, it's a funny story. So when you're going for research, there is a thing called as TAL list, Technology Alert List. So the US government is a little bit more careful when you are going for research, especially in sensitive areas. One of the things is magnetism. That is what my research on. So when I told the visa officer that I'm going to the United States to do my research, he asked me, what is your research? I told him like, oh, I'm going to do something related to magnetism. I'm going to make devices out of magnetism. That was when the visa officer looked at me, went to my profile, and gave me a 221G. So 221G is basically like administrative processing. In that administrative processing, they go over your background. So during the after I was done with my visa interview, I was neither rejected nor approved. My visa status was put on hold, and they went through my background. They did the background check and everything. And after 21 days, I got the approval that my visa has been approved. So I went back to the consulate. This time I had a drop box because I had already cleared the interview, and that's how I got my visa. So that was a scary experience, honestly, because my visa interview was I think on 21st or 22nd June, and then 21 days later, it is almost the end of July. That's when I got my visa, and I was about to fly a couple of days later. So if
Whoa,
I
that
hadn't gotten the visa in time, I would have postponed my like program or joining date or something like that. So yeah, that was scary.
Bro, that's interesting, man. Like your story sounds like well, your application process sounds like a nightmare for a lot of people, but
Yeah,
it's it's interesting. Like I think a lot of people like they don't know about that TL is that you just mentioned about. Even like
yeah,
I'm like hearing that thing for the first time that alright, something like that exists. I knew that they like
yeah,
do like a security background check, but I think for research they're like more careful.
yeah. I think it's more about you're coming to their country and doing research is sensitive things. They don't want a lot of sensitive things to be shared with people from other country, which completely makes sense. So yeah, that's the main idea behind that.
Exactly. So Sarthak, how do you like differentiate between theoretical knowledge and practical application in your field?
Theoretical knowledge and practical applications. So I would say, how do you differentiate? You ask, like,
So like as you were like working in experimental physics, so we have like two kinds of
yeah,
physics, theoretical and experimental. So people in theoretical, I think they mostly tend towards writing like theoretical research papers with like high level statistics and high level concepts. Whereas like in experimental, I think they tend to perform more experiments and they like play with the apparatus and like the setup. So how do you like differentiate
yeah.
between those in the terms of magnetism?
Oh, in terms of magnetism. Okay, okay. So it's basically like the theory people in theoretical physics, they would uh, formulate hypothesis and then use mathematics to prove that. Whereas people in experimental side of physics, they would test out these results, whether or not whatever they have come up with is correct or not. So theory people are you know, more into blackboards and computer-based simulations, whereas we experimentalists we are more into building the apparatus, building different kind of measurement devices and performing experiments with them. So these are the two different things in physics, theoretical and experimental. You also have something called as observational, but that is more related to astronomy side. You have observational astronomy and something like that. But when we talk about physics, you have theoretical, experimental. Theory people do math. Experimentalists use those things and test out whether or not it's right.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you like describe any ongoing projects or research you are like particularly excited about?
Oh yeah, so currently I'm doing research current I'm working on what is called as superconducting tunnel junctions. So basically we have superconducting material sandwiching an insulator, and when you cool down that device to, cryogenic temperatures to below 4 kelvins, that's when you see superconducting effects, and that's when you can do wonderful things, a lot of things with that. You can do computation, you can make use of that as a sensor. So currently I'm working on that. It's at a very, basic, like the first step. We are trying to build a setup that would help us help us fabricate these kind of devices, and I'm looking forward to that. So that is what I am currently doing. There is also another project that I'm doing. It's more about using what we make in the lab called as magnetic tunnel junctions. You use magnetic tunnel junctions to make sensors. So basically, I won't go into much details into that, but basically magnetic tunnel junctions are the ones that show a response in the resistivity of the device based on the magnetic field that you apply. So that is also something that I worked on, and I'm still working on it to some extent right now. And yeah, there are a lot more things I can like keep talking about it, but these are the two things I'm interested about.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I think like you have a lot of projects that you're working on currently right now, like at the university. You might have like some of your personal projects that you want to like pursue in the future, and some like the projects which you have to do. So like while doing a PhD, like do you have like a coursework as well along with like your own research, or like how does it work?
Yes, so for me, we do have coursework. Basically, it's like so for our program, we call it as core classes. We have six core classes we have to take. Those are classical mechanics, quantum mechanics 1, electromagnetism 1, electromagnetism 2, quantum mechanics 2, and statistical mechanics. So these six courses are basically like, very fundamental courses you would find in any university around the world as far as physics is concerned. So you here at UFA, you have to take those six core classes before the end of third semester. That's one thing. Secondly, once you're done with that, you then have the liberty to go ahead and take as many classes and as different classes as you want. So what we have for our graduate program here at UFA is a major and a minor. I'm doing a PhD in physics, so physics is going to be a major, but then I can do minor in anything. So I am planning to do my minor in electrical engineering because it's more towards the applied side. I also want to, explore that applied side of physics. But I know people who are doing their major in physics and minor in music as well. So yeah, so there are these classes that you have to take and satisfy some basic requirements, core requirements, I would say.
Oh, that's amazing. Like having this kind of flexibility, like while doing PhD is like pretty incredible that you can like pursue PhD in the thing that you want to pursue, and along with that thing you can like take a minor and like that in
Yeah,
music. That's pretty cool, I think.
it is pretty good. Yeah.
Exactly. So how does like the academic environment in US compared to India is like what are the differences and like how do you feel?
Oh, so differences. I will first talk about differences. So I think in the US you have a lot more freedom to, shape your PhD the way you like. So, for instance, if I'm doing a research on topic A, and if I think that topic B is also something that I like and I want to, pursue to some extent, I can do that. With India, I think there is a much more rigorous pattern that you have to follow, and you can't sway much. Again, this is my personal observation. It may be different for different people, but that's what I've seen. And the application process is different. So in India, you have a lot more, entrance exam based selection process. You have to pass an entrance exam, and then you have an interview, and then you know, get selected in the program. I think it makes sense in a country like India because you have like large population. But here, the application process is more qualitative. So you, of course, the transcripts and your grades matter, but more than that, what matters is the way you write your statement of purpose. Your recommendations matter, your research interests and your research background matters. So it's more qualitative here, whereas in India it's more, quantitative. You have to pass so and so things. You have to make sure you have so and so things. So yeah, that's the difference.
Oh, that's great. So, what are the current trends in job opportunities in your field of study, locally and like internationally?
So I think the field of semiconductors is gaining popularity all over the world. I mean, if you have heard about it, uh, so currently what's happening is the country of Taiwan, it's producing more than 90% of microelectronic chips that we use all around us. So your laptop, your smartphones, everything work on these microchips. And Taiwan is making 90% of them. And countries around the world have now started to realize that, oh, we also need to, have our own fabrication facility. We also need to have all of these things on our soil. So based on that, the US have passed a CHIPS Act in 2022, under which they are investing a lot of money in, setting up semiconductor industry all over the US. And I think the similar thing is being done by European countries. Even India is investing a lot of money in, fabrication of these chips. So overall, I would say that it has a pretty bright future, the industry of semiconductors and everything. And yeah, it's not just local, but also global. Globally, it's going to pick up a lot of pace, I would say.
That's cool. So, what kind of like jobs can one do after like doing like a PhD in like your field, which is like semiconductors? So, do you think that you can go and work in like companies like NVIDIA or like Intel and work with them like in chip manufacturing or like just designing of the chips and then like in further like doing the GPUs and the computational part?
Right. So when it comes to semiconductor industry, there are two things. One is the fabrication, second is the designing. So companies like Qualcomm, Nvidia, they just do designing of the chips. They don't fabricate them. My research is more focused on fabrication of these chips. So uh, then there are other companies like Intel and Samsung, TSMC. They primarily focus on manufacturing of the chips. So that's the difference. Uh, yeah, I think it is not very difficult to switch between these two. Of course, you have to, put in a lot of work, but it would be possible to for me to switch here and someone from that side to switch here. But more or less, yeah, I think right now like companies like TSMC is investing a lot of money in the US. They are currently building a plant, a semiconductor plant in the state of Arizona itself, like very close to Phoenix. Apart from that, there are other companies which are trying to set up their own fabrication units, and I think it's going to attract a lot of jobs. After the PhD, you asked me, so there are multiple roles that you can go for after PhD. So, as far as job opportunities are concerned, I think you can work as an R&D scientist in industry. So, there are multiple avenues that open after PhD. One is you can work in industry. The second option is you can work as a professor. You can join academia, become a professor, and lead your own research group. The third thing is about national labs. So there are national labs across the United States where the government funds them money, and they do research based on the fundings and everything. So it is more like a government job that we have in India, where you're a scientist and you're doing just the research. So there are these three main options after a PhD that one can go for.
Oh, that's pretty cool. because I think that in India, like after doing a PhD, like mostly people they don't think about like going into industry. Like they think about like just doing like a research position or like just doing your own research and like while being a professor at like some university, they like tend to pursue their own research. But I think like in US, you have this edge over the colleges around the world that after like doing your PhD, you can like also go into research position. Like right now, also I think OpenAI like they have a lot of positions for the people who are like doing PhD in like semiconductors and electronics because like the amount of machine learning and expertise that they need is pretty incredible.
Exactly. And uh, I was reading this article the other day. The AI is now getting so advanced that you might need a specialized chip for each algorithm. I don't know how much that is true because I'm not into AI, but I I think that makes sense that you need specialized chip for AI performances, specialized chip for training AIs and everything. And I think the field of AI and semiconductor would go hand in hand in the future.
Exactly, exactly. Like the hardware and software, like it always like goes with hand in hand. And
Yeah,
it's like the
exactly.
same podcast I did, like the previous podcast that I did with like the person. So he did his he's doing EC right now. He's doing like hardware development. So he's just talking about that. Hey, so we make the hardware on which you run your machine learning algorithms. So he's currently like doing his internship at and they like produce all the chips and all that. Then I was like, well, that's important, right? Like if you don't have the hardware to like run your machine learning algorithms, you can do anything much.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
So, Sarthak, what are the networking opportunities like, and how do they help you in your professional growth while being like in USA?
The networking is okay. So here at U of A, we have what we call as colloquiums. Basically, you have professors from different universities that every week you have professors from different universities who come to U of A and give a lecture. And I think that's a really good networking opportunity because let's say there is some professor whose work you really like, you can like go and talk to them like face to face, one on one. And I've seen many people take good use of that, and they have gotten good internships or gotten a good summer workshops, got into good summer workshops basically. So that's one thing. Secondly, I would say that the program here, they really encourage you to go for research conferences. Sometimes U of A also conducts conferences, and that's also where you can reach out to different people and everything. Talking about US in general, so there is something called as APS. I don't know if you know that, American Physical Society. If you're a member of that, there are a lot of opportunities you can do networking. You can, attend the conferences, join some groups, and be active on those groups. That's how you network. So I think networking is not a big problem here if you go out of your comfort zone and seek it. If if you are stepping out of your comfort zone, if you're reaching out to people, I think here they really encourage that, and they are really happy to see young minds doing that. So overall, that's a very optimistic and pretty good view I have, at least for me.
Oh, that's amazing. So, like your field of study is like solid states, right? In that, like specifically, you're working in magnetism.
Yes.
How many research papers have you like published till now?
So till now I have published 3 papers, and one is in a preprint. So 2 of the papers were like published by my professor in the undergrad. So I did some research under him in the undergrad. He published 2 papers. In my master's, I published 1 paper in IOP sciences, and between my bachelor's and my master's, there was this big summer break. That's when I did my internship at Baba Atomic Research Center in Mumbai. And the scientist that I worked under, he has also written 1 paper, and it's still in the archive. But yeah, so basically, I have three published papers.
Oh, that's
For
pretty
on
good.
out of three, there is only one paper that is like that's where I'm the first author. The other papers are where I'm the somewhere in the middle.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, like the
Yeah,
only thing that matters, I think, in undergrad is like just getting your like the experience that you want to have. You don't like care much
exactly.
about your credits. You're just like, all right, let's get to know how like we can do it, and well, just teach me whatever you can.
Exactly. Exposure is a really big thing in the undergrads. If you have the right exposure towards research, then yeah, it can make a lot of difference.
Exposure, well, that makes me come to our next question. So, well, exposure is pretty important. So, how do you think that, well, the exposure you get like in US is far superior than you get anywhere in the world? Though, like, opportunities are present everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter which country are you from or like what is like research going over there. But like, what are like some edges that we have in US?
So here I would say that the professors are more, open to undergrads. Unfortunately, that's what you don't see in India.
Yeah,
So in India, if someone is doing research, it is assumed that oh, he or she or they are PhD student. But here in the US, if you're undergrad and if you reach out to professors, I'm pretty sure some professor will have a job for you. And yeah, like I said, any exposure is a good exposure for the undergrad level. So that is a good thing that I like, that I'm seeing here. Even our lab has a lot of undergrad students who are doing really well, and they get a lot to learn as compared to people in India, where they are most undergrads in India are mostly encouraged to just take the courses. However, here it's a different thing. So yeah, it is a there is an edge. You're right.
that's amazing. So, what advice would you give to someone from India considering studying abroad in your field of study?
Oh yeah. So my advice would be to again start early, but more importantly to have exposure and realize what you really want to do, because if you start out late then you don't have much time to be flexible and try out different things. So my advice would be to if you're interested in research, just reach out to the professors in your college. If you think that the professors are not helpful, reach out to some scientists in some labs. You have so many IITs in India, you have so many ICERs, NITs in India. I'm pretty sure you can, if you show that you're dedicated enough, if you show that you're educated and hardworking enough, you can secure an internship in India. And these research internships, they do matter a lot. They can make a big difference. You never know, you are just doing a very small part of a big research project and it turns out to be groundbreaking research, and that way you can get even more benefits out of it. You never know what can happen in research. So yeah, my advice is be ahead in the game. uh, and yeah, while you're doing so, yeah, this is also important thing. While you're focusing only on research, make sure you also do good on your courses, because you know, at the end of the day, like even in the US, when I said that things are more qualitative, they still take your grades pretty seriously. They may not, differentiate between a 3.8 versus 3.7%, but they would be a little more suspicious of taking a 2.7 versus a 3.8 student. So make sure you don't blow up your grades at the same time. But I would say that in when you're doing your undergrad, research is also important. Just do some kind of work, and that will take you a long way.
That's great. And like last few questions. So, how much does it cost to like do a PhD like in USA?
So technically, it doesn't cost you.
So when you are admitted to a PhD program in the US, you get assistantship. It can be in the form of RA, which is a research assistantship, or TA in the form of teaching assistantship. Sometimes there is also something called as graduate assistantship, but this is graduate. I'm not seeing any PhD person put into graduate assistantship. But mostly PhD students have a TA or RA offer even before they step into US. And this TA and RA, it covers not only their tuition fee, but it also covers their insurance. Plus, they get a monthly stipend. Again, it depends on place to place. Places like New York and California, they have like pretty high stipend, pretty high, monthly salary that they get because these places are expensive. But you get some money from the department to do, to take care of your daily expenses. And if you factor all of those things in, technically it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely free. You may need to invest some money during the first 1 or 2 months, but that's it.
That's interesting. So, how do you manage your budget and finances as an international student?
Well, as an international student, most of my money is being spent on the rent, the housing, and groceries, I would say. And I mean, I spend like around 30 or 40% of my salary on housing. But then after that, since I am someone who cooks food at home, it doesn't cost me, food and groceries, they don't cost me much since I make everything from scratch. At the end of the day, at the end of the month, I would say you have some money left that you can, save it or invest it. It's totally up to you. But I think if you're talking about place like Arizona, which is not as expensive as California, it's very much possible to do a lot of savings and live a comfortable life. By comfortable life, I mean like you can have a decent enough life. You cannot expect to buy a house with this money. You cannot expect to buy a fancy car, but you can surely buy a second-hand car. You can surely have minimal expenses and have you know a pretty comfortable life, I would say.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Satik, it was like really nice having you on our podcast today, and I hope well, pretty much I'm like inspired by your journey, and I hope all the people who watch your podcast they're also like inspired by your journey and like how like you did your PhD, how you're doing your PhD, and what you will be doing in the future.
Thank you so much.